Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing my third and final installment in the Before and After, or Then and Now series, where I show you old videos I did on a book from back when I was in school. Today we're going to be talking about Comes the Blind Fury by John Saul. Let's see if we can... Ooh. Maybe? There we go. It is quite literally the only legitimate horror book I've ever read. I have read like creepy, that sort of a book where it's more of like a creepy thriller and not like legit horror. So this is the only horror book I've ever read. And again, I read it for a school project. So you'll understand now why I read it, because horror is just not my thing. Like, I don't like being scared. I'm a total wuss. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let you see the clip, and then after that, we'll get into it. So enjoy. Hello, everyone. For my book, I read Comes the Blind Fury by John Saul. It's a kind of a slow burn horror novel. It follows a family who moves to what appears to be an idyllic New England town, and their life gets more and more disrupted by more frequent appearances from a spirit that lives in the graveyard next door. It slowly builds with creepiness and suspense. 3 read-alikes for it would be The Totem by David Morrell, Wither by J.G. Passarella, and The Ignored by Bentley Little. Okay, so this is a standalone book. This is not part of a series. However, John Saul has a ton of books that are all, horror, scary sort of things. Sorry, just moving my... Oh, off topic, but I don't even know if you can tell from the video, but I rearranged a little bit. I film in my dining room, and even though everything looks basically the same, I am on the opposite side of my dining room. We rearranged the whole room just to give better flow, and now there's a whole wall behind me instead of a partial wall, so we're not going to be in the corner anymore, which is nice. And it gives me a lot more space on the countertop or the tabletop for my stuff, because I'm not jammed on the very edge of the table because I'm filming in the very corner of the room. So that's nice. So in case you're wondering why the bookshelves are reversed, it's because we dragged them one at a time around the dining room, so they ended up in reverse order. So, okay, so the book. The pacing is slow. Not slow in a bad way, but this book plays out like a movie, wherein the first part of it is all getting the setting set up. So happy family moves to this idyllic suburb in the middle of nowhere on the beach with, Cape Cod houses and that sort of a thing. And it's a new beginning for them. And so the first part of the story is really setting up the setting and introducing the family and kind of hinting at there being some secrets and that sort of a thing. And then as the family gets settled in, some shenanigans start to ensue. And as that happens, the pacing starts to build. So again, plays out like a movie where the first part is like them, literally the opening scene is them driving through town and looking, and the little girl like looking out the window of the car at her new school and where her dad's going to work and the new neighborhood and that sort of a thing. There is a lot of description in this book, and honestly, the book even reads like a script from a movie, where it's done with a third-person narrator, and instead of the character being like, I wonder what this is, it's like, then Michelle wondered this. And how do I say this? It reads like a script from a movie, wherein even when it's the characters kind of talking to one another, it's done in a descriptive manner. And I don't know how else to explain it. It's kind of a weird thing that I can't really think of experiencing something exactly like that in any other book, where the entire time I was reading this, I felt like I was just like watching a movie play out. So there's a lot of description, but it's like conversational description. So it doesn't feel heavy, but the book is... you get the creepiness of this and everything. A lot of it is from this heavy sense of place, which comes from a lot of description. So it's a little bit more densely written, but again, it's in a like conversational tone, so it doesn't feel really heavy. Again, to kind of continue the sort of movie feel of this book, the book doesn't necessarily follow one specific person. So again, it's told from a third person perspective, so it's not one specific character talking throughout the thing. But even so, it's not one specific character being followed through the whole book. It's, well, this scene happens to be from the mom, following the mom. This one's following the school teacher. This one's following the doctor in town, that sort of a thing. So it's not like other books where, you have like 2 or 3 characters and it switches between their perspectives. It's whoever happens to be the character in the spot where the story's being told now. That's the character that the story follows. So again, it gives it kind of a movie feel where, now this scene is going to be about this character. So you get scenes that are not, you're not necessarily like really following all of these other characters, but the opening of the scene potentially will be about somebody else, and then the main girl will walk in or whatever. So she's still the main thread throughout the book, but you get a lot of scenes that either are about someone else and maybe they're discussing her or whatever, or they start with someone else and she comes in. So I thought that was really unique, again, to this book. Like, I can't think of any other books I've read that way. And again, it gave it kind of a movie feel where the entire time I was reading this book, I just was like, don't even need to make a movie of this because I've already seen that movie. Because reading the book just is like watching a movie. I've never had that feeling watching it or reading any other books. So is really weird, and it was very vivid with this one. For the pacing, it is a horror novel. So expectedly, there is an open-ended ending. Now, it's kind of a weird thing where basically the last chapter is them kind of wrapping everything up. And then there's an epilogue. And in the epilogue, a door opens for the whole thing to start over again, basically. So all of the threads for this story are tied off, but there's an opening for the story to recycle and happen again. Which I feel like, again, I've never read any other horror books, but I know people that are into horror, and I have seen a couple horror movies, and that seems to be like an absolute necessity. Like, I think that is absolutely always the case with horror movies. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have enough experience to say for sure, but it sure feels that way. So that was not unexpected. So it's kind of a weird thing where like it's a closed ending for this story. So, the book is not really open-ended that way. Like you're not left wondering, all of the threads are tied off. But again, there's like, the story just starts to start over again, and then the book ends. And you're like, okay, all right, I get it. You're left with a sense of unease. For characterization, the characters are developed over time. However, they are not so much developed in you get to know more about them. There are like secrets that are revealed. So you get like, oh, this person has done some stuff in the past. So you get that sort of character development. But most of the character development that you get is them reacting and changing to this situation that's going on and the way that it impacts them over time. The events in the book change every single character. And so that's the character development you get. You don't necessarily get to know them as people. You get to watch the way they warp under this situation. And now, as I touched on earlier, the book, there is definitely a main character. However, the book follows the entire, to a certain degree, the book follows the entire town and mostly follows this family. So you get like I said, scenes from different, I mean, it's not really perspectives because it's not told from the first person, it's told from the third person, but you get stories that follow, or chapters that follow different people. And so you're not really getting like one really good sense of a couple of characters. You're kind of getting a sense of how the entire town is buckling under what's going on. And if you're wanting something with like really intense character development, I don't think this would be the book for you. However, if you're wanting something with a lot of characters that have pretty decent character development, and you get to see like the ripples across the whole town of something, that's what's going on here. So if that sounds interesting to you, then that's what's going on in this book. The characters are also very introspective. There's a lot of, I mean, I wrote that there's more description than dialogue, which is true. And especially since the dialogue, while there is some, a lot of the book happens in the characters' heads. It's them kind of talking to themselves, wondering what's going on with certain things, asking themselves questions, trying to figure stuff out. So a lot of the book isn't even dialogue, it's monologue, like internal monologue. So you do get character development in that. You get to see what's going on in people's heads a lot, especially the parents, the family, the parents and the daughter. A lot. I mean, almost exclusively. There is some dialogue, but mostly it's them kind of in their own heads. For the storyline, this book is very violent. There are several scenes with pretty explicit violence, and it happens, almost all the violence happens to children. So it like grade school age kids. So not only is it explicit violence, which a lot of people would have an issue with, but it's violence happening to like 10 to 12-year-olds. So if that is going to bother you, do not read this book. Also, if the main character who gets involved in like the mystical demon sort of stuff that goes on in this book is the daughter of the main family, and she is, I can't remember if she's 10 or 12. 10. We're going to go with 10. 10 or 12. So I get that adds to the creep factor, but that also adds to, I know a lot of people cannot handle stuff with kids. Like, can't handle it. So I wanted to warn you, like, if that's not your thing, do not read this book. This is a plot-centered book. So it's not, like I said earlier, like, you're not getting character development for the point of character development. You're getting enough to push along the plot, and the very fact that this reads like a movie script indicates that this is definitely a plot-centered book. It's also thought-provoking. I mean, not just because it's open-ended at the end, but it's thought-provoking because all of the stuff that's happening is like psychological, well, aside from the explicit violence, but that is caused by this like psychological game that's being played. So it's thought-provoking in, you know, if this sort of thing were to happen to me, how would I react, and that sort of a thing. So very thought-provoking, mystical. I mean, there's basically a ghost through this whole book. So, you know, it's mystical. Again, I get that that's not for everyone. I personally don't really prefer that sort of thing, but it was on my reading list for school, so I read it. It is also very tragic. I don't think anyone goes into a horror book expecting a happy ending and expecting things to kind of like turn out all right. But there you go. You've been warned. If you are one who likes a happy ending and is not okay with characters dying, that sort of a thing, then don't read this book. For the frame and the tone, the frame is this idyllic seaside town in New England somewhere. So this idyllic New England town on the seaside where, you know, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's got a view of the ocean. Everyone has lived in the town for 100 plus years, or I mean, their family is obviously not them. And so that's the background. or the frame. And it is pretty detailed because I feel like this is kind of a cult classic setting where you have happy, like I said earlier, happy family moves to idyllic little town and then stuff goes awry. And I think there's this psychological, like automatic creepiness when stuff happens in these little towns because you were programmed to think that everything should be great there. And so when you go somewhere that's like somewhere, you know, people go for on vacation or you dream to live of, and then you get there and then stuff goes terrible, there's this weird juxtaposition. So I think that's why this frame is so popular. But anyway, you have this detailed background of this tiny little town where it's totally idyllic and, you know, whatever. And again, that frame gives this creepy small town atmosphere that you saw in the Jack Reacher book as well. This is a recurring theme in books. I mean, even if they're not horror books, if they're a thriller or whatever, this is definitely a recurring theme. So no one's going to be shocked when they read this book and they're like, oh yes, the small town set on the seaside. Got it. The tone of the book is darker. It's a horror book with a little girl who goes on a murder spree. I mean, you know, so darker. Foreboding. You spend a lot of the book with stuff building and you know it's coming. I mean, none of the things that happened in this book were a surprise to me, even having not read any horror books. So you know it's coming, so you just have the sense of foreboding like the entire time. It's suspenseful. It's mystical. It is contemporary. This is supposed to be like now, you know, it is, they do have some throwbacks to like 100 years ago when the girl who died. But for the most part, this is a contemporary book and it has a rural setting. Now, that's my breakdown of the book. For my own personal feelings, I was disappointed in this book. I don't know if it's just because I've never read any horror, but I was expecting to be like creeped out the entire time. And I think because it was super predictable, I knew exactly what was going to happen. At no point was I like, ooh, this is really creepy. I kept waiting for some sort of twist or turn. And I was like, I knew exactly what was going to happen. So anyway, I wasn't creeped out. I was able to predict it literally all the way to the end. What? Being told I'm a liar. So like I said, I've never read a horror novel, so I don't know if that's kind of standard or not, but I was expecting something a little more out of the box. I personally, the Ruth Ware books, especially not Girl in Cabin 10, in a dark wood, I think is the title of it, or dark wood. It's either In a Dark Wood or Dark Wood. I thought that book was way creepier than this one, and that one is just like a light thriller, and this one is legitimately a horror book, and I was like, meh. I was bored because I was able to predict everything, so I personally did not enjoy this book. However, I'm also not into horror novels, so I don't know if, there are probably a bunch of people that would enjoy this book, so if that's the case, then good for you. I'm glad you found a book that you enjoyed. This was just not my thing. So in case you were wondering how I personally felt about the book, I was underwhelmed. I did read this one, so I can't speak to the audiobook version of it. But yeah. So that was Comes the Blind Fury by John Saul. And if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content, make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading. My husband has pointed out that it was not clear if I was talking about if you enjoyed the book or the video to thumbs up the video. But if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a thumbs up. I don't care whether you like the book or not, because like I said, it's not going to be for everyone. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. So that was Comes the Blind Fury by John Saul. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading. And the most of the character you've read. Bleh. Oh, look like an old lady. I just reread this. You think I'd remember it? Mystical. I thought it said musical, and I was like, in what way is this musical? Oh, hey, family.